All right. Now that we've gotten, deep into UND football season, obviously that means it's time for UND hockey, everybody's favorite time of year. So we bring along Brad Schlossman now for the start to another UND hockey season. And Brad, I think, a lot of people mention this, as the beginning of the college hockey season starts, where there's a big kind of differential in good college hockey teams between those high picks and those veteran college hockey players that really determines how far a team is going to go. So with that in mind, kind of where do you see UND stacking up this year?
Well, I think that's what's intriguing about this team because I think they have a mix of both. They've got some really young players who are going to infuse a lot of skill right away. Jackson Blake looks fantastic. Owen McLaughlin's a guy who just has a ton of skill and is going to see the ice really well. Dylan James and Ben Strand and the other freshmen, I think, are going to add to that too. So they've got some guys who are going to come in and add some skill to their group right away. But then they've also got some veteran guys. And you look at their blue line, you've got Chris Jandrick is a fifth-year senior. They've got Ty Farmer coming in as a fifth-year senior. Ethan Frisch is a fourth-year senior. Clevin's a junior. Cooper Moore is now a junior. They added Ryan Sidorsky as a fifth-year senior. So that's a really veteran back end. And I think when you have that, it's a really big deal. So they're kind of getting a pretty good mix of older players and some of those younger skill guys, and I think those are the teams that win in college hockey. So we'll see how far they can go with this squad.
Yeah, and speaking of that defense core too, just looking at the fifth year seniors, the vets that they have on that blue line, does that maybe sort of ease the transition post Jake Sanderson life for that blue line?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that they played so much without him last year that it's really not, I would say if he played all last year, that would be the big question because he just did so much for them and was just unbelievable. And I think you'd be sitting here saying, they were good last year, but Jake won them a lot of games. What's this going to look like? And now you come in saying, we saw what they look like without them, and they were still pretty good. So I do think that playing without him last year, they got used to it, and I do think, like you said, some of the older players help that. When you don't have a ton of turnover, and the guys you do bring in are Ty Farmer's won at every level. He won a Clark Cup in Fargo. Mark Senden was his captain there. He won a national title at UMass. I think he's the type of guy fans will see him for the first time this weekend. He's the type of guy you win with.
And big expectations coming in, obviously, with just where this team has been polled and ranked kind of across the nation here. But looking at the conference as a whole, who do you see as maybe their big threats to at least competing at the end of the year for that conference title?
Yeah, I really think there's a distinct top four in the league. I think, UND is one. Denver's another one. Denver has some firepower to replace. They did lose a lot, but they kept their back end together. And I think that's just going to be a huge strength. And when I go through my preseason rankings, that's probably the position I weigh the heaviest is the D core. And they have a lot of those guys back. So I think that's going to help. They have some transfers they got that are going to add the offense. So I think Denver will be back in the mix. And then the two teams that I also think will be in the mix are Minnesota Duluth and St. Cloud State. Minnesota Duluth, they have that Biondi, James, and Olsen line that was really good last year. I think they started last year as their third line, but every single game they were the best line. And I think by the end, they were moving up the line chart together. And then they bring in, Isaac Howard's a first round pick. Ben Steves was a guy who scored tons of goals in the USHL. So I think they've got two legit lines that can score. They've got some third and fourth lines. They add that one critical piece they added was Derek Dashke from Miami. If there was an Achilles heel for Duluth the last couple of years, it's been their power play has just been, dreadful at times. And they really didn't have a true power play quarterback since Scott Perunovich left. And now they do. Derek Dashke, that was one area Miami was really, really good at last year. Their power play was good, and Dashke ran that top unit. So that's going to be a huge pickup for them. I don't know if they have the depth that they've had. So if they have injuries, that could set them back. But if they're healthy, they're legit top 10 team in the country and top team in the NCHC. And then St. Cloud State, I think, is the team that's going to fly under the radar a little bit. Last year, they were pretty disappointing. I think everyone thought, okay, they're coming off the national championship appearance. They finished second in the league. Everyone's back. This is their year to make a run. And it didn't work out that way. They finished tied for fourth in the league. They got knocked out of the league playoffs in the first round, knocked out of the NCAA tournament in the first round. And then they lost a bunch of guys. So I think, human nature, you say, okay, they finished fourth and they lost all these guys. But I still think they have a lot of guys back. And I do think they underachieved a little bit last year. And I think they can come back this year and prove that that was a fluke. And when I go up and down their roster, I'm like, this is a pretty good roster here. They've got the VT Mietnen and Yami Kranola line back together. They added a transfer in Grant Cruikshank, who is really good at CC. He went to Minnesota. They put him on the wing in Minnesota. St. Cloud's gonna move him back to center, and I think he's gonna really have success there. So I think those four teams are top 10 teams in the country and are going to be pretty good this year.
You mentioned Miami too, and I'm kind of just curious what your opinion is on, we're looking at most likely some realignment in the future at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a team where, they're most likely bound for the CCHA or something like that?
I mean, it's possible. If Miami, one of the big things right now, the NCHC has a massive buyout to leave. Mm-hmm. And I just can't see Miami paying that. If there was a situation where things set up where it was a smooth transition and the league said, hey, look, like, you go there, we're going to add this team, we can just waive it. I think they would go. I think they would like to be around some of their more geographical rivals. And I think they would look at that as a league where they could become the Minnesota State Mankato of that league and really dominate. But there are some significant hurdles before that comes to be. But I do think it's worth keeping an eye on, because I don't think that's an outlandish idea that they could eventually end up in over there, but it's certainly not imminent at all right now.
And then looking at the beginning of the schedule for UND, obviously you have a Holy Cross this weekend. Trying to get a look at this roster here, who are you kind of hoping that you can really catch an eye on here going into the first series of the year?
Well, I think there's a number of things lineup wise that you're curious to see. Are they going to put the shutdown line back together? Sendinane and Jammernick. They also have other guys that could fit on that line, like Ben Strinding could play on that line. Dylan James could play on that line. They have options. But at home, they've really liked to do that. Put down a shutdown line and throw it against the other team's top unit. Holy Cross had the same line that scored all their goals against Boston College. Granted, two of them, I believe, were on the power play. So, maybe it wasn't a true line, but, I would not be surprised if, Brad Berry saw that and said, okay, Sendinane and Jammernick, you guys get this line and, take that line out and see if they can beat UND with the other line. So I think that's one thing to watch in the Holy Cross game. The other thing is, they had a couple guys out of the exhibition game who they definitely want to get in. One of them is Jackson Kuntz. He's a big power forward. He can really shoot the puck. He can score goals. And the other one is Carson Albrecht, who came alive in the second half of last year. He was generating tons of scoring chances. He scored a big goal out at Duluth. He was, probably their most dangerous forward against Notre Dame in the NCAA tournament. And those guys were out of the lineup. And the guys at the bottom of the lineup for UND in the exhibition game were excellent. And so now the coaches are in a situation where what do you do? Like, you can't, Griffin Ness was the 13th forward. He only played like 7.5 minutes. He scored a goal, had two other chances, set up on. He was like, there's no way you can take him out. So I would anticipate Ness is back in. At some point, you want to work Kuntz and Albrecht in, and how does that work? Like right now, it's hard to justify taking anyone out, but maybe that'll happen for Saturday night. We'll see. Decisions have to be made when they're healthy. They're going to be tough decisions, especially up front where UND has a pretty good group.
And some tough decisions maybe right away with next week. You got Quinnipiac on the line, and once again, you're pretty high on Quinnipiac. What do you like about them this year?
Yeah, I think they've a lot of times in college hockey, it's the first round draft picks who are coming in at 18 that get all the hype, and it's the older teams that sometimes win. And they've got 7 fifth-year seniors. That's over a quarter of their team. Some of the guys that they got to come back are guys I did not think were coming back at all. Zach Metza was one of the best defensemen I saw last year. And he decided to come back, which was shocking to me. They got a bunch of forwards back who I think are going to be pretty good. So I just think this is a team. Quinnipiac's not going to allow much. It's going to be really tough to score goals against them. And UND found that out last year when they went out there. They won the second night on Saturday, but I think it was 2-1, maybe 3-1, 2-1. They didn't score much, and
I think it was 3-1.
It might have been. Maybe that was. Oh yeah, because there was the bad giveaway. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
The goalie gave one away, and then Jake Sanderson did what Jake Sanderson does to set up 2 goals. So it's hard to generate against that team, and I think a lot of teams are gonna find that out this year. So that'll be a challenge, and yeah. So and then after that they go to Minnesota. And then after that, they play Arizona State in Las Vegas. So it's quite the week after week way to start the season here for UND in October.
Well, looking a little bit more ahead, end of the year ahead, who are your predictions, early predictions for the Hobie and the Richter?
Well, I thought both should have gone to Devin Levi last year. I thought he was the best player in college hockey.
100% agree. 100%.
When he wasn't even one of the top 3 finalists, there was definitely a buzz around the rink. Like, what is happening right now? He's unbelievable all year long. So I actually know goalies don't win the Hobie very often. I think they've won in the last like 25 years, but I think he's probably the front runner. If you want to name a guy who is not a goaltender, and if they decide, we're not going to give it to a goalie 2 years in a row, I think Luke Hughes at Michigan, his numbers were off the charts last year. When every time I see him play, he's just generating chances. He's just really, really good. So he would be the other guy I think to watch.
All right. Well, it'll be Holy Cross to start things off for UND, and you can follow along starting right now on grandforksherald.com. Lots and lots of coverage to get through, and stick around for the game as well with Game Center with Brad. And Brad, we'll talk to you next week, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thanks.